So welcome back to Start With Hello, conversations about disability. And on this episode, I have the pleasure of welcoming one of the most esteemed guests that we have ever had on this podcast. And actually, I guess I should say, because it's the only guest we've ever had. This is the only guest that we've ever had on this podcast. So my name is Jason Morrison. And so if you need to know anything about me, you can just go back and listen to the initial episode, which is the brief little intro that we did. But I want you to introduce yourself to those who have no idea who you are.
Well, my name is Morrison. I am in high school. I'm 16. Just got my permit, so I'm in that stage of life, you know. I'm volunteering.
That's another episode.
Totally, it totally is. I'm volunteering at Southeast Christian Church at the Blake and Baker campus. That's my home church, the one I've always gone to. And I absolutely love it there.
And so for those that don't know, Southeast Christian Church is a little tiny, minuscule church.
No.
Right.
It's one of the top 5 biggest churches in the United States.
Oh, it's top 5?
Yeah.
So there's like 1 million people that go. Do you know how many people go there?
I think it's like over 400,000, genuinely.
Right. And there's a campus every 10 feet, right? It's
exactly.
huge.
There's a ton.
How many campuses? There's got to be, 9?
10, I
9
think,
or 10?
now.
That's a lot.
And there's a lot with
Right.
the Shine ministry in it.
Right. So and that's pretty cool too, because when we started, both of us started volunteering. I think the Blake and Baker campus was the only one.
It might have been, yeah.
That had any kind of disability ministry in it at all. So how long have you been volunteering there?
I've been volunteering in our Shine Suite, which is our disability ministry. I've been volunteering there for a little over a year now. I started last January. Not this past January, but January before that. And I also serve in the nursery there, which has been about a year now, too.
Okay, and I guess I was going to get into that a little bit later, but I guess since you brought it up, I wanted to ask you this. So it's kind of a joke between you and I that anytime somebody hears, "Oh, you've been serving in a disability ministry, you can do anything." It's
right.
like I don't know, they kind of put volunteers in our ministry up on a pedestal.
Absolutely.
But I wanted to ask you, so which one is harder? Serving in the Shine Suite or serving in the nursery?
It totally differs between days, honestly. There's some days in the nursery where everybody's super calm and chill. And then there's others where it's like absolute chaos. And same with our disability ministry. I mean, there's some days where the persona in the room, like everybody's super chill, everybody wants to color, and everybody wants to pay attention. And there's others where there's literally people laying on the table or doing cartwheels or jumping on a couch, trying to break out the window. There's tons of different stuff.
Break out the window?
There's tons of different stuff.
Okay. So if any staff member from Southeast is tuning in, we have never had an instance where anybody has tried to break a window.
Ever.
We follow all safety guidelines.
Absolutely.
Everything. So
every single.
I can't remember when this was. I think it was when Kyle Idleman, who's one of the pastors there, was doing a sermon series, I think, on sexuality.
Yeah.
And you remember there was like this big push in the nursery, like, hey, we need volunteers. Because obviously people didn't want to bring their little ones into the service if we're talking about sexuality. So I think at the time, like I was serving as a deacon and I thought, well, I'll go down there and serve. Mm-hmm. So my answer to this would be that no, like the nursery was so difficult for me. And obviously if they needed me, I'd go back and I'd do it again. But like, that's just not my thing. Like, just because I have kids doesn't mean that I should be volunteering.
Doesn't make it easier.
No. I can't say this though. I was way more calm than I would have been years ago.
Absolutely.
Like, they handed me, man, bless her heart, this little girl, I think it was her first time in the nursery, and they handed her to me, and they were like, this is her first time, and I thought, this is going to be so bad. You're going to scream the whole time. But I was like, you're just going to have to scream. We're just going to
get through it.
And we did. We got okay. We did okay. And like, but I'm like, I don't know if this is not my calling. Like, I'll help. Definitely I'll help. But like, I don't, and I used to think, people that said, well, I felt called. I felt led. The Lord was telling me. And I think sometimes I've like wanted that, but I did not feel like God was saying, hey, the nursery. You should
come to the nursery.
and in fact, I kind of feel like God was saying, hey, I appreciate you helping out here, but
maybe not.
Your home is the disability ministry.
Love it.
I mean, I'll go back, but I definitely like the disability serving there more. So,
Yeah.
so you said what, a year and a
Yeah.
half, maybe?
Yeah.
And so why did you start? What was, because it's not, honestly, it's not, you don't see a lot of people your age saying, oh man, you know what I really want to do Sunday morning? I want to get up early
Yeah.
and go to the disability ministry. So what made you start?
Well, one of the biggest things about being a part of the church is being the hands and the feet of God. And I was like I wasn't thrown into the deep end, but I had no clue where I was, what I was doing. I had no clue anything. But it was my dad and my grandpa that brought me there for the first time and showed me around, and we didn't have nearly as many people as we do now. But I had no clue what I was getting into. I really didn't. There wasn't a specific reason that I was like, I want to go to the disability ministry. But for some reason, I was led there.
I was hoping you would say me. Like, I was like, you better answer me. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But I need all the credit.
My greatest inspiration sitting right across from me.
Right. You know, and then we have this recorded for the world to hear.
Yeah.
You admit my level of, no.
Absolutely.
No, but, and I think that's cool because, like, I can't remember. I can't remember. I was trying to think about, you know, the first time, like, that you came to the Shine Suite.
Yeah.
I don't remember having to, like, poke or prod you or bribe you. Or,
I do remember I sat in one spot the whole time.
No,
I did not
but
move.
I mean, like, just to get you there to begin with.
Oh, yeah.
Like, because it wasn't like we weren't having, like, long conversations about disability. Obviously, you know what my job is and what I do full time. So, I don't know. It's kind of this weird thing. Like, you just showed up one day.
It was like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it reminded me a lot of, like, how I got involved. Like, I didn't really sign up, you know?
Yeah. You just kind of roped in.
Right. And for those of y'all listening, Lauren has heard some of these stories, I don't know, a million times.
Maybe, yeah.
And
not counting.
You're just suffering through it again for the purpose of this podcast. And actually, as I get older, you're going to have to hear them, I don't know how many times. But
we won't count.
Right. Thank you.
For your sake.
But I don't remember, like, I don't think I did. I know for a fact that I didn't sign up. There wasn't like something put up on the screen and I thought, hey, this is my opportunity to serve. Right. Gary Spangler, obviously your grandfather, he came to me one Saturday and said, hey, Mary, who works with disabilities, needs our help with the family. And that's all I got. That's all the information that I have. And it was just kind of a roller coaster ride from that point on. And it's definitely been worth it. But so I'm curious, because we didn't really sit down. We didn't have these in-depth conversations about, Lauren, I really think you should give back to your church, and I think you should be the hands and feet of God. And, you know, the disability ministry is where I'm led. So we didn't talk about that. You just kind of showed up. Mm-hmm. And you really, you know, it's not like we gave you a manual. So I'm curious, like, were you afraid of anything? Did you have any kind of apprehensions? Or was there anything like, okay, I'll do this, but...
Well... One of the things, I don't know if I ever told anybody this, it's one of our guys that comes on a regular. He has Williams syndrome. And he sat down right beside me the very first day. And he was really close, more than I was comfortable with. And he just sat down, he was like, hi. And he like just kept waving at me. And it was so weird for me. I was so scared. I was like, do not let this person get any closer to me. What is going to happen? I was so nervous. And that's literally maybe the only thing I remember from that first day, except for leaving. And I was like smiling from ear to ear. And you were like, that was a pretty easy day. And I was like so excited to go back for more. Like I wanted to go back so badly the next week.
Yeah, I think that's kind of, I've been, as we kind of talking through some of this podcasting stuff here, you know, personally, that's why I think the name fits so well. Start with hello.
Exactly.
Because it's so simple, but it's really disarming. Mm-hmm. You know, I felt that sometimes with a lot of people that I met. Yeah. And then if you just can start with hello, it's like if you could just get that out. So like, mm-hmm. When you had, and I know who you're talking about, and it's kind of, and we've joked about it since, that this person made you feel uncomfortable because he's the most gentle-hearted person.
Right.
I'm pretty sure, like this morning, he probably came and sat down right next to you just as
Several
close.
times. Yeah.
Right.
Maybe more close.
Right. So I guess the next question is, was that like the only fear that you had? Because if not, like, how would you overcome those kind of fears walking into something like that? Because I don't think that it might not be natural for a lot of people. You know what I mean?
Oh, I felt like it wasn't natural for me. A lot of people told me it was natural for me, but I did not feel like that at first.
Yeah, I would say it's natural for you.
But I was so creeped out. There were so many times. And then the first time that we went to church, because since our church is so big, we have service on Thursdays. And I was like, I want to go on a Thursday. Like, the class is really big. And we ended up going on a Thursday. And that was like only like a month into me serving. Had not experienced much uncomfortable situation. It was mostly like everybody's smiling, everybody's super friendly. There was this one girl, and she was maybe in her 20s, and she came up and like sat almost on me and got up next to my ear and started like almost making like a hissing noise. And I was so scared. And then the volunteer just came over and she was like, oh, this is so-and-so. Like, she wants to say hello. That's her way of saying hello. I was like, what?
Like, I remember that.
Yeah, because you were there, yeah.
And I don't know if you remember me doing this, but like
I do.
You know what
Very much so.
You know what I'm about to say,
Yeah.
because like it wasn't like you were. I would never say that you were clingy. Like,
no.
But you kind of stayed kind of close.
Yeah.
To me. And I thought, well, you know, if you're going to really do this, then you got to be able to do it without me.
Absolutely.
And I kind of wanted to see how you'd react. I've been put in those situations, and whether intentional or not, like I've been put in those situations, and I thought, oh my gosh,
what do I do?
Right. What do I do? Like,
Yeah.
I have no clue.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many different diagnoses and personalities, but it's really no different than being put in a room with anybody else. How do you know how to talk to anybody else?
Exactly. You just talk.
Start with hello.
Yeah.
And then you kind of see how things are going. But I intentionally moved in the opposite direction of where you were.
Yeah, you
so
did.
So that you could get
don't
that.
I remember?
So that you could get that experience. But like, it was so cool because you just handled it so well.
I don't even remember it. That's the funny thing. I don't remember a single thing about that day other than her coming up to me and other than you walking away and me being very uncomfortable.
I thought it was so great. I thought, because if I remember right, I thought that person was nonverbal.
She was.
And I remember, didn't she grab your arm?
She did.
And I was like, this is perfect.
This is great.
Like, this is welcome to disability ministry.
Right.
Like,
absolutely.
You've got to figure it out.
Yeah.
But you learn this very quickly, how somebody who is nonverbal can communicate and how you can pick up on that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was an assumption that I made a long time ago, that somebody was nonverbal. So like, well, I guess we just can't have any kind of communication
But
together.
you absolutely can. You can have just as much of a conversation with anybody that's nonverbal as you can with anybody that's fully verbal. And it's wild. And the more you get to know people, the more you figure out their way of talking to you, which is
exactly. And
amazing.
I think, like, you know, because also you come and have helped, I should say help, because you do way more than help at Rise Fitness, you know, our inclusive fitness program. But there's one athlete in particular who, for some reason, I have difficulty understanding him. Yeah. And I don't know if you remember this, but I told you that once recently, and I was like, I don't know what it is. I just have a hard time understanding. And I don't know if you remember what you said, but you basically said, well, you just got to listen.
You have to listen.
You have to really listen. Yeah. And I thought, well, you know, that sentence is so simple, but that's like so true. Like, how tuned in am I to people?
Right. You have to block everything else out. All of your to-dos for the day, everything that's like in the back of your mind, and you have to be there in that moment and actually like tune in and listen very closely. And once you get to know the person more, you realize some of the different ways that they would like slur words or something, and you get to know them better. And that's when like you can really listen, and you start to understand what they're saying when somebody beside you is like, what did you heard what from that?
Oh, like, yeah. And it's kind of funny because like I'm supposed to be the one with all the experience, and then you come in and it's like, you formed, and I think this was really cool too, because there was one of our teens in our class who I don't find him so difficult to understand. And I think you know who I'm
I
talking
do.
about, but one Sunday morning we were going up to church and, we're on the elevator and we bump into this family
Yeah.
and he turns around and he addresses you by name.
Yeah.
And, I was kind of like, well, I guess I'll just stand here not knowing.
That's great.
Nobody knows me. I've been here longer. I'm the one that buys you the notebooks that you draw in every
Sunday.
Like, you should know my name first.
Right.
But, and it really shocked his mom. But I think in a good way. She was like, well, I didn't know that you knew her name.
Yeah.
And
Because he doesn't say names very often.
No, he doesn't.
It's very rare.
He doesn't. But I think that's a testament to how well you listen to people, not just by obviously what they say, but their body language. So if they're nonverbal or maybe they just don't talk a lot. Like so, he's one. So obviously you overcame all those fears.
Very much so. Even though I still have tons that I probably haven't even encountered yet. This is like a never-ending learning path.
And you have decided to jump like well off the deep end, like
Very
this coming
much
year
so.
at Camp Freedom, because I remember. And so for those that don't know, Camp Freedom is a camp that our church, Southeast Christian Church, hosts once a year. It's at Country. What do they call it? Country Lake?
It's Country Lake Christian Retreat. Yeah.
Christian Retreat, and it's a really cool place. And so
it is. Yeah.
They make everything that they can make possible. Mm-hmm. So we'll go horseback riding, zip line, paintball. What else? Like kayaks or canoeing?
Yeah, kayaks, canoeing. There's a water zip line. There was a blob in the water.
Oh, yeah.
And water obstacle course.
Archery.
Yeah.
And throwing. I think they threw some axes too.
Yes,
right?
There was axe throwing. Yes.
Right.
I remember that.
I know that there's a group that brings horses.
Mm-hmm.
They do that. And so I think the first year that I went, there was like 98 campers. And I think they said forgive me if I'm wrong here, but I think they said they have like around 150 signed up for this year.
They do.
And you have decided that you wanted a challenge this year. So I passed that along to the leadership about like, hey, she says she's up for it. So does that make you nervous to think about like?
Absolutely not. It's a it's a whole new path. I mean, if I got 5 campers, I mean, like you are really like you have to engage so much with somebody else that you learn so much. And my patience, especially last year, my patience was way better coming out of that. You are basically a parent for this one kid for a weekend, which is not a lot of time, you would think. But getting them up to brush their teeth, or if one of our campers is up in the middle of the night at 2 a.m., already dressed and ready for the day, you have to figure out how to deal with that patiently. Yeah. And so no matter who I get this year, or if I get 2 people, it's patience and it's learning. It's more things that I can learn, more people that I get to meet.
I told them, like, hey, give her the most challenging person that you can do.
Right.
And I say that, and I hope that the word challenging doesn't come across, insulting. When I say challenging, I think what I'm referring to is not that the person is challenging or the person is difficult. What I'm referring to is our level of knowledge in how to best serve that person. Last year, one of the campers that I was with, I feel like it would be safe to say that he was a little bit more medically complex than other campers. So for me, there was a steep learning curve, and there can be some fear and apprehensions with that. But it's so cool when you kind of get over those kind of fears.
Yes.
And those walls start coming down. But that kind of leads me into this next question, is that I don't think anybody can get into disability ministry. I say any ministry. Like, if you're going to get into ministry and your heart's in it and you're like, and that's your thing, like you feel called from God to like, okay, this is it. Like, I finally found this thing. I don't feel like you can do it and not feel changed. So I was wondering, like, how would you explain to somebody how being involved in disability ministry has changed you?
I thought of 2 words, and it was patience and engagement. Because
you should have used empowerment, because if Garrett if our buddy Garrett Wall works with the Shine Ministry too, and he's on staff, and so one of his favorite words, and he's going to kill me for this, is empowerment. So I was hoping you would say.
I should have said it.
You should have said empowerment. It's like I was like, if you would ask me something, I would have tried to work that in.
Right.
But anyway, so you said patience and engagement.
Yeah.
Right.
Because through the disability ministry, I mean, like I already talked about patience before, but engagement, even with anybody else that I know, like engaging deeper into a conversation and listening to different cues or picking up on body movement, like I'm a lot more aware of stuff and I can engage with people more in not only like conversation, but just like in everyday life, like reading the room of a situation. Or
do you feel like you seek it out now? If you're in public, because I kind of feel like I'm this way. Like if you notice like the stemming motion of which can be comforting to someone with autism, I feel like I could gravitate a little more to that. Whereas I used to like, I need to stay away. Like I can't get involved in this. So you kind of feel that way too?
Yeah.
So obviously we didn't have this master plan of, all right, we're going to set Lauren up to be this master servant in disability ministry. We didn't walk you through all of this stuff. We kind of just, you showed up, you got involved, you faced any of your fears kind of head on. What would you say to somebody, like if you had a friend that was maybe thinking about it and they were like, you know what? I'd kind of like to help out with that, but I don't know. It's just not my thing, or it's just I'm kind of scared of it. Like, what would you tell them?
There is no way to prepare. That is the only thing. I mean, you just have to jump in. You're going to be uncomfortable.
And that's not helpful.
No, but you are going to be uncomfortable.
Like if I asked you that, like, hey, I'm thinking about serving, and you said, well, there's no way to be prepared, I would probably be like,
you probably would.
You know what? I'll just, can I direct cars in the parking lot? Like I'm not ready for that.
Well, and it's uncomfortable, and a lot of people aren't okay with being uncomfortable, and they will situate their whole lives around being comfortable. But when God calls us to change, and change is uncomfortable, I mean, this is a whole, like, I have never done anything like this before. It's taught me so many things, and I put this down, you just have to do something. And I mean, whether that's like talking to somebody or sitting down and coloring with somebody. We do a lot of coloring in our suite upstairs before we do our sermons, and we do a lot
of storytelling.
We do a lot of storytelling.
Some of our folks are fantastic storytellers.
Absolutely. Yeah, whether that's about their life or they're retelling another story that they've heard. So you just have to do something.
Just getting involved, I think that's, and the comfort level really speaks to me a lot, because that's hard. That's been hard for me. And I'll tell you this story. So I think it was before camp this year, I was talking with Mary, who runs the Shine Disability Ministry at Southeast Christian, and we were talking about Camp Freedom, and she mentioned to me that she's like, oh, I got the perfect camper for you. You're going to love this. And she smiled, and I thought, okay.
And you're going to be uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah. But she said that she was describing this person, and she mentioned that they were diagnosed with autism. And I want to, if I remember correctly, that I don't think that they were entirely deaf, but they had some hearing issues.
Yeah.
And they said that they preferred to be with somebody who knew sign language.
Absolutely.
And I was like, why in the world did you say that I would be? Because all I had done at that point was really just take
the beginner's course.
The beginner ASL course at church. And I had forgotten a lot of it because I didn't I didn't practice it, obviously. Right. And I thought, and you're giving this person, you're assigning them to me, this is a terrible idea.
I better start practicing, right?
all this stuff.
Let me take a couple more courses before camp.
I wish that I had taken better notes in that class.
Right. And, maybe drawn some pictures.
And I want to learn sign language so bad because I think it's such a beautiful language. But that experience was really telling for me because I caught myself reverting back to my comfort zone. And I kept saying, okay, well, I'll volunteer if I can check off this box and this box and this box. And I realized that number one, my focus was off entirely. Like it should have been about the person,
right,
and giving this person all of me
Yeah, and best camp
regardless.
experience that they could have.
Yeah, and like it's not about me. And I caught myself, wanting to say, almost wanting to dictate, well, yeah, I'll serve
But
if all of these situations are perfect.
mhm.
And then I remember telling Mary, she may not even remember this, but I said, you know what, I'm just not going to ask any questions anymore. So if you want me to do something, then ask me to do something.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to ask questions. I'm not going to question what you're asking me to do, because I just feel like all of the things that she has asked, and I don't believe it's just her. I mean, obviously that there's a God's got this whole plan, and I'll never understand it.
Yeah.
But so there's this greater plan at work, but and I kind of feel like maybe I'm thwarting that if I'm like trying to put all these stipulations on it. But I just said all these things that she's ever asked of me have all been uncomfortable.
Right.
Everything,
And they will be.
And they will be.
Yeah.
And I said, but you know what? Those have proven to be the best things. Like I remember those more. I feel more of a,
because it grows you more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. And it leads to, helping other people. I just love it a little bit more. So that's what I told her. And she's the kind of person that's like, yeah, I'm definitely.
Absolutely. I'm going to roll with it.
I'm definitely going to take you up on that. So I want to mix this up just a little bit. I guess I'm going to have some fun and maybe, pick on you some, I guess, but because for those listening, I gave her a couple of these questions ahead of time because I wanted her to feel, a little bit prepared, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to throw some in the mix. And I wanted to say this really quick before I ask this question too, and it doesn't really relate to it, but people listening to this might think, well, you just started a disability ministry podcast and the first person that you have on is your daughter, and I could see somebody thinking, well, why wouldn't you have tried to go after somebody well known in the disability community? But here's my thing. I think having you on as the first guest is absolutely critical because we've talked about this a lot. One of the best stories that Ryan, our president, gave me was like a long time ago. He asked his daughter, how many people do you know with Down syndrome? And she's like, I have no idea. And he was blown away by that. And he said, because you know more people with Down syndrome than the average person does. But she didn't see Down syndrome. She saw John or Kate or Alex or Julie. Exactly. She saw names. And so we were talking like, where does that barrier come up with people where there starts to become this separation, this differentiation between people and a diagnosis. And so I think it's super important that people know like your heart and where you're serving and how to get people engaged because you are the future of the church. At some point, you may be making these kind of decisions. You may be a part of a church plant somewhere. And I think it's fantastic that you would be able to say, wait a minute, we don't have a disability ministry. Yeah. Our church is incomplete because we don't have that. And it won't be a fear or anything. So I think that's important. If I was really formal and professional, I would have put that up on the front of the podcast. Yeah. But, right now we're just lucky that the microphones are on.
Absolutely, we are.
So anyway, so let me throw this out there. So I want to throw you a scenario. So let's say this. I'm a brand new volunteer, disability ministry.
Love it. Welcome.
I know nothing about it. You've been teaching the class for 5 years. Okay. And they walk me in the door and they say, hey, Lauren, I want you to meet Jason. This is his first time serving in disability ministry. You're in charge of the class and you get to show me the ropes. What instructions are you going to give me as a new volunteer in the best ways to serve in your classroom?
Well, I would introduce you to every single person in that room and then tell you, yes, absolutely.
Go one by one and introduce me to everybody.
Absolutely.
Okay, I like that.
And I would give you background details. This is their favorite food. They like talking about this. We have one guy in particular in our teen class that loves talking about girls, and I would probably tell you that right off the bat about him. I'd be like, this dude loves talking about girls, and he will probably ask you 10 times a day if he can sit down and talk with you about girls. And I would tell you those little details. But I would tell you, if I was going back up to teach and I was leaving you out there, I would, seriously, like I said earlier, I would tell you to just do something. Like, don't just sit there. Do something. Engage in somebody's, like, conversation or with somebody, like, whatever they're doing. go ask somebody about their week. Go ask somebody, like, what they're doing the rest of the day. Like, go engage with somebody and do something. Don't just be sitting there or standing there.
Last week, I spoke at Southeast Christian Church to
Yeah.
volunteers, and I think I told you this was like
Mm-hmm.
the last slide, and I didn't do it, but I wish that I had, was like,
Mm-hmm.
my biggest advice was that.
Yeah, do something.
Because we've seen that. We've seen like the power in that of just
Even
like
sitting next to somebody, your presence is such a big deal, you
Right.
know?
And it goes all the way back to start with hello. Like, find somebody you don't know
Absolutely.
and introduce yourself. Hey, hello, I'm Jason. What's your name?
Right.
You know, even with Rise, when we do our assessments, obviously we're getting to meet people there, but we always find some tidbit of information about them that makes them feel more comfortable. And because I got hung up so much on, I'm uncomfortable, but like, I've been in church. This might be their first experience in church.
Exactly.
And they're way more uncomfortable.
They could be scared to death.
Exactly. And here we are worried about ourselves. instead of that. So I like that, because I think that new volunteers, or even older volunteers, or I say older, more experienced volunteers, I think that should apply across the board. Like, find somebody that might be sitting by themselves, or somebody you don't know, introduce yourself and learn one thing about them. And try to memorize that. We joke a lot about age, and I know we do. And you know, for those that aren't, I wish there was a camera here, because you see her laughing, because recently it's become a topic of my increasing age and level of
just a little bit
level of uncoolness that comes along with that. But you know, I was trying to think how old I was when I started disability ministry. But it wasn't your age.
No.
Like, and I don't, like, disability was, and I know a lot has changed in our culture, but like awareness and but I don't, like, I just feel like I didn't see it. You know, I didn't know anything about it, and I was so uncomfortable. So I'm curious, like, what do you think is one of the reasons, or many reasons, or however you feel about it, that people your age do not get involved with serving the disability community, or specifically disability ministry?
Specifically disability ministry, but I would say also serving overall, is because it's different. They're uncomfortable. They don't want to go out, or maybe it's that they don't want to wake up early. We talked about this like a couple weeks ago in the nursery when we did our big group devotion. Like, some people are just tired and they don't want to get up in the morning. Other times it's because they're genuinely uncomfortable and they don't want to go and do something like that. Or they're like, how do I talk to this person? Or what if this happens or that happens? Like, what am I supposed to do? Or what can I do? But we are all called to serve. No matter what age we are, we're called to serve in the church. And that doesn't, I mean, they're not like, once you're 25, that's when you start serving. That's when you'll start serving wherever you want, or that's when you can start serving in the disability ministry. Like, your knowledge doesn't grow by just years, like, especially about a topic that you don't know. You know, it goes by experience in that place. So, like, you're not going to learn about the disability ministry, and you're not going to get more comfortable if you're not there.
If I was somebody your age at your school and you thought, you know what, Jason I think he would probably be really good in the disability ministry, but he's like totally uncomfortable. Like, do you think you could talk me into it?
Absolutely.
So what would you? I'm curious.
I'm very convincing.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I am convincing, stubborn, extremely.
You got a list beside you.
I do. I didn't write it down. It's memorized. That's how. But extremely persistent. I mean, and it's a great. Hey, these are great qualities. You know, definitely.
They can be.
Hey, I'm definitely not going to bash you on the Ability Ministry podcast.
Right. Please don't.
I'll wait till we stop the recording.
Absolutely.
But no, I'm curious. Like, if I was at your school and you were like, you know what, I think this guy would like. I think that he not only would enjoy it, but so how would you talk? Do you have a speech ready? How would you talk me into it?
I don't have a speech ready. Some people are like, they tell you to memorize your testimony and make sure that you know it on the spot to tell anybody, or make sure you've got your service call, quote unquote service call, or like you've got like what you said, like you know what you're going to say to somebody that you encounter that's like, hey, like that could be cool. I don't know if I want to really do it though. And you're trying to convince them. it would literally be me in that moment praying to God and asking him to speak through me to get that person to come. Because there's nothing that I can do in my own power to try to get somebody there. There's nothing that I can say or do, especially with how difficult our ministry is, that would make somebody be like, oh yeah, that seems great. Unless I completely lied. Like, I would have to say...
You can lie and get them into church.
Right.
That's a unique approach.
But like, I would have to say, it's great, it's super calm. We all just sit there and watch the sermon on TV, and then we do a little worship, and then everybody slowly leaves. But it's not like that. And people don't like being uncomfortable. And I would literally have to be praying to God to speak through me during that moment. And then I would know what to say. But
I think because I struggle with this, like if I want to invite people, because I feel like if I'm really comfortable now in a room, like if we said, hey, Jason, there's this room of 200 people. Every single person in that room has a disability.
I'd be completely fine.
Drop me right in there.
Yeah, exactly.
I would love to be in there. I think that would be so awesome. But I still remember what it felt like to be the opposite of that.
I do too.
Hey, I don't want anything to do with this. Not only I'm not just uncomfortable, but like I'm like this is really, really.
Don't get me near that building, right?
I would avoid it. So
yeah.
I think when one of the things, like I've been trying to think through those things, like how would I ask somebody, and it would be, I try to relate back to how uncomfortable that I used to feel, because that's natural, I think.
Exactly.
But then once you get over that initial piece of being uncomfortable, I think that's the coolest part, because then you start to see like, why was I even...
It opens you up to a whole new world.
And it's a world that I absolutely love being in, because I think you found this too, that this group of people cherishes friendship.
Yeah.
They have a level of honesty. It's a pure honesty.
It's great.
It can be a little brutal if you...
Sometimes you gotta make sure you smell good, your hair's done.
Don't ask a question if you don't want the answer.
Absolutely.
But it's never delivered with ill will.
Exactly.
It's always this, it's just the answer.
Exactly.
So
tells you how it is.
I think that's kind of been my approach to it. But I don't think that there's like one great way to get people involved. I think whatever barriers people have in front of them that's prohibiting them, I think that they're going to have to overcome that. That's their own journey. I've been trying to think about, okay, what are these obstacles? How can we remove those to make them...
But your heart has to be ready. You can't just get somebody there and get them to break down their own barriers, like by trying to convince them. Their heart has to be ready to do that.
I think that that's with any ministry, right?
Absolutely.
Like you can't... I guess you could just show up and serve, but I just don't...
Yeah.
I could just show up and sit in the back of the classroom and
you could.
check that off my box
or
list and just say, you know what?
I served this week.
I served this week. Pat me on the back. I'm great. But my journey too has been more of like when they first did the Shine Prom, I felt, and this is a little embarrassing to admit it, but I felt so accomplished because I was one of the group that was out in the where the entrance was. So, everybody comes into the church, they drive in. And so we had poster boards and noisemakers, and we were cheering everybody on. Hey, we're so happy you're here.
The whole church is yelling at everybody.
And I felt so accomplished that I was out there doing that. And I felt like I was really doing something. But in my mind, in my heart, I felt like I should be inside the building. But I was so afraid. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what I was afraid of. I literally, and ironically, when I finally stepped up and said, you know what, I'm going to go inside the building, the person that I was an escort for the evening, like I'm still friends with him.
Absolutely. And he's great.
Yeah. And I was like, wow, I would have missed that amazing friendship.
You wouldn't have even known him.
I've met another person that comes to our guys' night through him, and his family is really great. So like, yeah, I struggle with that too. Like trying to find, like, I guess for lack of better words, like the elevator speech of something that's going to really convince somebody like, oh, once they hear this, then they're going to be sold out for disability ministry. So the only other question I wanted to ask is, do you have like any kind of fun story or, obviously something that we can share on a podcast.
And just so you guys know, this is one of the questions he did give me on the sheet. So I knew this question was coming. And it took me like a good 5 minutes because I was trying to think of the best story, but there's not a best story. I mean, every single day you get like 5 or 6 funny stories a minute. It's wild how much you get a lot of fun times. But I'll go with the most recent. And so today, like you said, it's Sunday. We started our lesson and the leaders are explaining it. It's about animals. We're doing the other animals of the Bible. So it's not the main animals that you always hear about.
Oh, I got to plug this. This is the other animals of the Bible, which just so happens to be a video-driven curriculum series specifically designed and created for disability ministries across the globe. You can purchase this series on Ability Ministry.
Turned on his advertiser voice.
Right.
Everybody, watch out.
You like that was pretty good.
That was pretty good.
AbilityMinistry.com.
AbilityMinistry.com.
I think you have to say it like .com.
Yeah.
Right, so anyway,
like you're in a commercial.
Right. So we were watching the other. Well, we were in the middle of the other animals of the Bible series.
Right. And today was the talking donkey, and it was great. They were explaining it, and one of the guys beside me that comes to our teen class, he's there like every week. He colors the whole time. He has autism, right? He has autism and Tourette's.
I believe so, yeah.
And I mean, he's a great guy, the sweetest. And I'm going to try to do this without getting loud in the mic. But he goes, "Ee-oh," like a donkey. And literally every time that somebody said donkey, he would go, "Ee-oh." And it was so loud, and I died laughing every single time. And then everybody, like, around us, I don't know if you noticed, but everybody around us started doing it.
And I think
the 3 people around us.
That's so cool about our class because I did not pick up on that
really?
At all.
That is so funny.
Well, and today was really special because one of the folks in our teen class was actually stepping up to teach today.
Yeah.
We were going through note cards with her, so I was entirely focused on these note cards. And making sure that
make sure you were doing your job.
Right. As and I was told her I was the assistant teacher today. She was in charge. And so I was trying to make sure we're going through these note cards. And then, she had note cards and they didn't know any different, but the slide numbers weren't matching up.
Right.
And so I was panicking and I was trying not to panic to where she could see it.
Because she was nervous.
And I'm so upset that I didn't hear the donkey noises going on. But
it was great.
But don't you think that that's kind of that's a true thing about disability ministry? Like if you're in I would say our class is a pretty big class, like physically the building size. So there could be something happening at one table that the other table.
Oh, absolutely. And most times there is. There's tons of little, like I said, there's tons of little funny moments. I mean, you got like every couple minutes you make a new memory somewhere, and it's whether that's good or bad. But I mean, most of the time it's absolutely hilarious. Like somebody will and a lot of our people have a great sense of humor. Like they will crack the best jokes and or randomly act like a donkey. And I was like, this is so odd. I've never heard him say that before. Sometimes I think that he's not paying attention because he's coloring the whole time. But then you guys were like, oh, well, it's a talking donkey and
But I thought the same thing because I remember he could go through a whole ream of paper.
Yeah.
And when I figured out that because I remember taping, I think it was 6 sheets of paper, and he also loves Thomas the Train.
He does.
And so I was like, let's do a story because he's a storyteller.
He absolutely
I don't think he just scribbles.
The best one I know.
He's right. He loves stories. Once we did that, we started getting, those notebooks, but you can stop him at any point in class and ask him a question. And that was an assumption that I made that I shouldn't have made where I just thought, well, if he's coloring and he's talking, attention. He's not right. And he absolutely is.
Oh, he could. I remember the day that I taught the first time I went through all the slides, and then I was like, okay, well, and I asked him, I was like, can you tell everybody what happened in the story? Just to recap, make sure everybody's got everything. And he just went through and said everything from the story. And all of our volunteers were like, I thought he wasn't paying attention. And I was like, I didn't think he was paying attention either, but that's what counts about trying to engage, whether he said that or whether he just stayed silent and kept coloring. I mean, it was great.
Yeah, it absolutely goes back to what you said earlier about finding somebody, engage some way, somehow. Because if you're doing that every week or some folks are like our church, we meet Thursday night and then Sunday morning, and some people volunteer there, both times. So the more that you're there, and I totally forgot about the cafe. That'll have to be another
whole another talk.
Well, and we've actually, hopefully, they're going to let me set up a podcast actually.
Oh, and it would be fun. Notifications on for that one.
Yeah.
Turn on the bell beside the button.
Right. We would probably have to toss out a couple of disclaimers there.
We may.
But I've already had some people tell me that like they definitely want to be on the podcast. So that will be definitely a fun one to record. So I don't have any other questions. And, since as we stated earlier, I am a middle-aged, very uncool aging dad.
It's okay.
So I don't have like a fancy outro. So what would be your parting words or advice to anybody who might be thinking about volunteering, or maybe they're at a church who doesn't have a disability ministry, or maybe they're at a school? Like, do you have anything that you would like to any parting wisdom for them?
Absolutely.
You're bursting at the seams over there.
I am, yes.
Like, did you write down a whole paragraph?
No, I did not. Okay. This wasn't even a question that I got.
I mean, you're like so hype. I'm like ready. This is going to be the best right here.
Well, don't get yourself too excited.
Okay.
But if you don't have anything to do with disability, go and talk to somebody that does. But go and talk to somebody that does. And if your church doesn't, I encourage you go up to one of like the top leaders of your church and ask why. And I would love to hear their answer. Why don't you have a disability ministry? You may think you have one or two people in the pews that have a disability, and then you start a ministry and you're like, the doors are bursting because there's so many people coming through, like there's so many people, and you will get so many more people to church by opening up so many different ways that people can come and listen. Talk to somebody. Like if it's church, if it's school, and there's nothing in place, ask them why. Really, why not?
Maybe like throw something at them.
No.
Like be violent.
No. But you genuinely, why don't you? Because it's such a big population. If you have a nursery, why don't you have a disability ministry? If you have a kids ministry, why don't you have a disability ministry? You need to have curriculum for people that aren't sitting in the main service. And you need to be able to reach people
that may
from
learn
there
a little differently.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to reach people whatever way that they need to be reached.
I'm terrible at this, but I've been trying to commit these numbers to memory. Southeast Christian Church, especially the Blankenbaker campus, it's in Jefferson County in Louisville. Mm-hmm. And I think the 2020 census, it said something, it was a little more than 780,000 people in Jefferson County. So that's a pretty big reach for this church. And according to the CDC, 1 in 4, so 25% of the population, would identify some way as having a disability. And I think in talking to our president, Ryan, he said that now people believe that number might be a little bit higher due to the pandemic. So we're looking at potentially, it'd be awesome if I could say that word, right?
That would.
Potentially.
It's okay.
Potentially.
Potentially.
Yeah. Why don't I just let you talk?
Because it's okay.
Clearly
I can do it.
This is the last episode that I will be hosting.
It's okay. I'm taking over.
It was the first, and
everybody thank Jason for being on my podcast.
Right. Yeah, you've done a fantastic job helping me. You've been
so proud of you.
You've been patient and you have engaged with me.
And now it's your time to leave.
Right now it's my time to leave. So we're looking somewhere around I want to say it was 195,000 people. And that's just in our county.
Yeah.
What's mind-blowing is usually when you throw those numbers out, somebody said, well, there's no way we're going to reach 195,000 people. Mm-hmm. And I agree. And I'm like, okay, so what if we reached the bare minimum? What if we reached 1% of that?
Absolutely.
We're looking at almost 2,000 people just with disabilities. And those affected by disability don't just show up by themselves. They have family members, maybe caregivers. And
that's at least one other person that's getting to church. So now you have 4,000 people at minimum that are coming to church. If that is the 1% and that is the least amount, you have 4,000 more people that could be coming to church.
Right. And I haven't even talked about and that would be a great episode anyway. I'm hoping Ryan is so good at explaining that because there's biblical implications and he can walk anybody through why your church is not complete until it has a disability ministry.
Oh, yeah.
So I think you're right. So I don't think I'm allowed to disagree with you anyway.
Possibly not, but
So, well,
it's okay.
So we covered everything, right? We covered volunteering. We covered things that you were apprehensive about, why somebody else might be apprehensive, some ways that you may be able to encourage other people. We tossed in some stories there about our class. So, and we finished with parting wisdom and the fact that this may be my last episode hosting.
Yeah.
So I can't think of anything else. So we will wrap it up for there. If you have any questions about our curriculum, abilityministry.com, and we do have several different options for curriculum. We have children's curriculum and we have curriculum for adults. One of the best feedback that we've ever been given about our adult curriculum is that it's not children's curriculum, that we write adult curriculum actually for adults, because if we're teaching adults, we want to talk to them like they're adults. We have what we call as our traditional curriculum, which is usually PowerPoint driven. Everything is digital. And then we also have some newer video driven series where we get into some of the fun characters, like Lauren mentioned, the other animals of the Bible, which has
and it's great. The whole class is laughing the whole time.
Right.
There's so many great moments.
And what I love the most about the curriculum is the teaching the memory verses.
Oh, it's great. It is so good for us, too.
I think it's probably there's a lot of times where everybody's engaged, but when we're doing that sign language video or learning that, and did you notice today, like some people stand up?
Oh, they do.
I think that's
like
great.
They're presenting.
It's like we're doing the Pledge of Allegiance or something.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's
Everybody
fantastic.
stand for the memory verse.
Right. So if you have any questions about the curriculum, or maybe you're one of those churches that Lauren talked about where you don't have a disability ministry, you go to abilityministry.com, and in the top right, you can click on I want to, and then there's a Start Here button. There's also some consulting that we'll do for free. So we can certainly help you out. So until then, we will wrap it up. So thank you for your time.
Absolutely.